So I'm back. Hey y'all, I'm excited to be back with another Pow Pow World video. Sorry for the short absence, but I was super busy. I've been conducting incredibly important creative research that was absolutely necessary and was not at all a waste of time. But Pow Pow World has been calling my name, so I figured it's about time I get back to bring some Pow Pow into this world. It's been a while since I've worked on Pow Pow World, so I decided to go dumpster diving through my collection of doodles to see if I can bring some life into some of these throwaway scribbles. And lo and behold, I found some treasures. All of today's Pow Pow will be coming from these doodle boards, so let's introduce the first Pow Pow. So this first design is actually my most recent creation. Finished it on February 20th. The original design came from a doodle board I did back in March of 2023, so almost a year ago, which is about the time I started putting lots of my efforts towards coming up with designs for my own creature collector project. Every design on this page is an attempt at a potential Pow Pow design, which I think is kind of neat to see, since you never see that kind of stuff for Pokemon unless it's leaked. As you can see, 5 of them have already graduated from being drafts to becoming official Pow Pow. And today, one more will join them. Any guesses before the reveal? 3, 2, 1. Well, if you guessed the fire camel, you're wrong, because I chose the cat on the cloud. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking. That's a stupid design. It's just a cat on a cloud. And that's precisely what I like about it. I'm not above silly concepts, and the fact that it's kind of simple, I think really feels true to Pow Pow World. Or at least what I envision for Pow Pow World. There's a sense of humor to it that I really enjoy, which is why I finally came around to it and turned it into an official Pow Pow. I love this idea of a super lazy cat that floats around on its cloud, looking down upon others and ordering them around like everyone is their servant. All I had to do was add a tail and some patterns to break up the blank space, and the design was pretty much set to go. Meet Nanko, the lazy floater Pow Pow. A Nanko has never been spotted not lying on his cloud. It's led many to believe that it actually doesn't have the ability to walk at all. But given its bossy tendencies, many believe it to just be lazy. Many scouts report that Nanko can be very hard to work with for this very reason. I went for magic type since I figured it magically conjured this cloud that it floats on. I considered the air type as well, but just because it floats on a magic cloud doesn't warrant enough the need for an additional air typing. I think this might be one of my more controversial designs just because it is so simple being a cat on a cloud. Even I went back and forth on whether this should be a Pow Pow or not, but the more I sit with the design, the more I love it. Nanko's design brings up the important conversation of what does it take to be a Pow Pow design, and I like that about it. Now, let's move on to our next design. Nanko was my most recently created design, while this one was actually done back in October, November of 2023. However, I held off showing it until today since it really didn't fit with the last few Pow Pow videos. The doodle actually came about while I was doing explorations for a demonic legendary Pow Pow design, which eventually led to Spyron. While the design wasn't legendary enough, I knew I would soon use it. I thought the design was really strong, something very creepy and somewhat ancient about it. At least for me. Felt like something that could have been in Spirited Away, which is a world that I love a ton. The design stayed quite faithful to the original doodle. I experimented with different body types for the bottom portion. The long arms I thought were pretty cool, but I also wanted to keep the body tighter and more spherical, so I went back to the original body shape. I was really worried that the design was too simple and tried adding lots of things that didn't end up working out. I eventually landed on these yellow pollen dots to break up the negative space. Just something to dress up the design without doing too much, but let me know what you think. But with all that done, let's introduce Chaka, the clover Pow Pow. While a 4-leaf clover is often seen as a symbol of luck, Chaka are seen as bad omen. It is known that Chaka steal others' luck and store it in its clover. The brighter its clover, the greater the amount of luck it has collected. I'm always really happy when I can come up with a design that isn't really anything else. I love a design that takes inspiration from a mythical creature, a yokai, or real life animals, but it's always extra rewarding to come up with something that really isn't anything in particular, which is why I'm particularly fond of this design. It also has one of my favorite names I've come up with. Something about it just fits this Pow Pow so perfectly for me. And I love how it sounds. Also, I've always considered making Pow Pow based on each holiday we celebrate in the States, and I think it would be a perfect one for St. Patty's Day. But that's it on Chaka. Let's move on to the next design. This design came from a board back in August of 2022. When I first drew it, I knew I would turn it into a Pow Pow one day. I've been meaning to make a bird-based design and thought this one was a perfect start. I thought the original Doodle was really strong. I like that it has this tiny ball with giant wings, so I want to stay pretty true to that. I also like that its wing came from a pretty unusual part of its body, being more the face region rather than where the arms would be. While I did like it as it did feel like it was missing something. So I decided to add some proportional wings where you would expect them to be. And I think it really brought the design together. Helps deal with the dead space too, which is something I struggle with a lot since my designs tend to be quite simple. For the colors, I was really inspired by wooden cuckoo clocks since I felt like the wings of this bird kind of resembled the adornments you would see on these kind of clocks. Plus, these clocks also have a bird element to them, so it all just kind of ties together and works really well, I think. So let's introduce Chronowl, the small winged pow pow. An old tale states that Chronowl originally had only one set of smaller wings. Its small wings were not large enough for it to fly. One day, a greater power from beyond gifted them a larger set of wings so that they may soar through the skies. I really love how this design came out. At first, I was a little worried it might look too much like other existing owl designs I've seen, but I think it does have its own separate identity. I love the two set of wings. I actually didn't have a type in mind at first, but the four wings gave it this angel kind of feel to it, so it was a perfect candidate for the mystic type. I went back and forth on whether it needed the air type or not. I don't want to be like Pokemon and just add the flying type to every bird-based design. But in this case, I think the design is centered enough around flying that the air type is warranted. This design definitely needs an evolution, but I wasn't able to come up with anything at the moment, so be patient with me. I actually plan on going back and adding Prevos and Evos to some of my existing Pow Pow, so look forward to that. But for now, let's get on to the final Pow Pow. This doodle board was drawn up back in July of 2022. Unlike the last ones, this doodle board was created before Pow Pow World was even a thing. So it's just a bunch of random, stream of consciousness type of doodles. One Pow Pow had already come from this board, that being Koji. Pause right now if you want to guess which doodle will become an official Pow Pow next. If you picked the nature scene with bears, I like how out of the box you are, but no, the next Pow Pow will be based on this one. I always really like the energy of this doodle. While the design is kinda simple, the pose and actions really help sell it for me. Enough that I decided to give the design a go. While I think the body is a bit plain, I do really like the head. I'm always a sucker for horn and wing motifs. First thing I had to do was draw it upright to figure out what it would look like. My main objective was to make the body smaller, to better highlight the head since that would be the main point of focus. I added a belly pattern to break up the negative space and gave it a pair of wings so that it could fly. Then I quickly drew it up in a flying pose since that's always how I imagined this thing maneuvering. I was really liking how it was shaping up. I love the chubbiness in the original doodle, so I wanted to keep that, if not exaggerate it, even further. It started dawning on me that it kinda resembled Bowser or Bowser Jr. So I knew in the coloring stage I would have to deviate away from yellows. I finished the outline and was moving on to colors. But the head looked really off to me, so I had to draw some half spheres to figure out where the lines went wrong. I rarely do this, but it always helps a ton when trying to figure out where it all went wrong and where everything should go. It's just a little tedious and not very fun. After having that as a guide, fixing the issue was really easy. And I love the way the new head looks way more. Better angle and even more expressive. Almost gives me a Looney Tune or Blue Eyes Toon Dragon vibes. The colors took a minute, but I eventually landed on a couple that I really enjoyed. But with all that done, let's meet Barpi, the mischievous Pow Pow. This Pow Pow loves drama, especially drama around love. Barpi has the power to make people infatuated with one another. It will often create love triangles for the sake of its own entertainment. I didn't expect to love this Pow Pow as much as I did. It's the most different from its original doodle, in this video anyway, but it's still pretty much the same design, just dressed up a bit. I was worried it would be a boring design, but I think the final illustration of it does a good job of selling it. It really helped me realize that lots of my doodles could have potential if I take the time to fix them up and showcase them in the right light. Fun fact, the alternative colorway for this design is based on Devilman's colors, since its head shape kind of resembles his. These are all the Pow Pow for today's video. What do you think of this batch? Pretty random designs since I just went through my old drawings to see what I could repurpose. But they all fly or float, which is some kind of related theme, albeit a weak one. But that aside, I really love this batch. Especially Chaka, Chronowl, and Barpi. They're just designs that speak towards my biases. But Barpi, I really am so happy with. I think it looks quite original, and I think it's actually a good candidate to be Pow Pow World's mascot, since I'm still on the fence of which Pow Pow should be the face of the project. Just as Pikachu is the face of Pokemon, I think Barpi's colors are really fun, and it has a lot of mascot potential in my eyes. I love the idea of a more mischievous mascot, just because slightly evil characters are more of my bread and butter. Just to give you an idea of Pow Pow so far that I've considered as potential mascots, I'll showcase them here. But yeah, let me know what you think about any of the designs. Love them or hate them, I'm curious what y'all think. It's always great to get an outside perspective, and it's one of my favorite parts about releasing these videos. Regardless, thanks so much for watching, and I will see ya next time.